Videodrome is dead.
Televisions that breathe, guns that fuse to human flesh. A movie so disturbing its actors feared electrocution, nervous breakdowns, and permanent trauma. Videodrome wasn't just shocking on screen. It was a production nightmare fueled by paranoia, pain, and ideas most filmmakers wouldn't touch. These are 20 verified behind-the-scenes facts that prove Videodrome may be the strangest movie ever made, both on camera and off.
And reality is less than television.
Fact number 1. The format that created body horror. When audiences think of Videodrome, they remember the stomach slit, the disturbing image of a living body opening to accept a videotape like a machine. What most people don't realize is that this iconic moment wasn't designed first as an artistic choice. It was dictated by technology. David Cronenberg originally intended to use VHS tapes in the scene, but once special effects tests began, the illusion completely fell apart. VHS tapes were simply too small. They didn't visually read on camera, and they looked absurd when inserted into the prosthetic body cavity. The solution came from necessity, not symbolism. Betamax tapes were larger, thicker, and more tactile. And suddenly, the body horror worked. That single technical limitation reshaped the film's imagery. The format itself became part of the horror, embedding media physically into flesh. Without Betamax, Videodrome's most famous moment wouldn't exist. The technology didn't just support the movie, it defined it. Fact number 2. The nightmare effect that broke James Woods. The stomach slit scenes weren't just uncomfortable to watch, they were genuinely miserable to perform. To create the effect, James Woods was fitted into a specially constructed couch where prosthetics were glued directly onto his bare body. These weren't quick applications. The process took hours, and once the effects were attached, Woods was essentially immobilized. He couldn't move freely, he couldn't relax. Every take required precise coordination while he remained trapped inside the prop. The experience was so physically and mentally exhausting that Woods later said he would never again agree to do an effects-driven movie that required anything to be glued to him. This wasn't movie magic. It was claustrophobic, sticky, and deeply unpleasant. And the discomfort you feel watching the scene? That's real. It's the sound of an actor pushed past his limits to make Cronenberg's nightmare believable. Fact number 3, the character who never exists in real life. One of Videodrome's most unsettling ideas wasn't created through special effects at all. It was built into the story itself. The character of Brian Oblivion, the man who seems to guide Max through the Videodrome conspiracy, never physically exists in the film's present reality. Every time he appears, it's through pre-recorded television footage. Even when other characters claim to interact with him, the audience never sees him alive in the same space as anyone else. This wasn't a budget trick or a production limitation, it was deliberate. Cronenberg designed Oblivion as a man who had completely surrendered his physical existence to media. By the time the story begins, Oblivion is already dead, his identity preserved only as video recordings, lectures, and talking heads. Fact number 4. The scene that could have electrocuted the lead actor. One of Videodrome's most unsettling moments involves James Woods wearing the infamous Videodrome helmet, a device packed with wiring, electronics, and metallic components. It looked dangerous, and according to both Woods and Cronenberg, it felt dangerous too. There was real concern that if anything went wrong, Woods could be electrocuted. The fear wasn't theoretical. Water, sweat, exposed wiring, all of it created genuine risk. Cronenberg was so worried that he personally stepped in to serve as Woods' body double for parts of the scene, deciding that if someone was going to get hurt, it should be him. This wasn't bravado, it was fear, and it underscores how far Videodrome pushed practical effects into unsafe territory long before modern safeguards existed. Fact number 5, the flesh gun that went too far. Even by Videodrome standards, the original design for Max Renn's living gun crossed a line. Rick Baker's first concept featured grotesque anatomical details, including facial features, a mouth, and even foreskin integrated into the weapon's design. When Cronenberg saw it, he made a rare decision. He told Baker to pull it back, not because it wasn't effective, but because it was too effective. The design was so explicit that it risked distracting audiences rather than horrifying them. Baker toned it down, and the final version became one of the most iconic images in body horror history. The fact that something could be considered too graphic for Videodrome tells you everything about how extreme the original vision really was. Fact number 6, the scene made from a dental barrier. One of the most infamous images in Videodrome is the living television screen, the moment when the TV seems to breathe, swell, and invite James Woods into a deeply unsettling kiss. The effect looks impossibly organic, like flesh disguised as technology. And that's because, in a way, it was. The surface of the television wasn't silicone or latex. It was dental dam, a thin rubber sheet most commonly associated with oral and dental procedures. The material was stretched over a frame and coated with reflective white paint, giving it a slick, skin-like texture that reacted naturally to pressure and movement. When Woods pressed his face into it, the rubber flexed and responded like living tissue. Rick Baker later noted that similar rubber materials had been used in early rear projection techniques, including effects dating back as far as King Kong. But in Videodrome, the material wasn't hiding an illusion. It was the illusion. The result was intimate, disturbing, and unforgettable, a moment that still makes audiences uncomfortable decades later. Fact number 7, the TV that was literally played like an instrument. The breathing television didn't just look alive, it was performed. Instead of relying on motors or automated rigs, the effects team created a system that allowed the TV to be played in real time. A crew member operated the television using a keyboard organ connected to an air compressor and a series of valves. Each key press controlled airflow, causing different parts of the screen to inflate, pulse, or collapse. The effect wasn't pre-programmed, it was improvised, like music. This gave the TV a strangely organic rhythm. It didn't move mechanically, it breathed, it responded, it hesitated. The living television became a character, not a prop. And because the movements were controlled live, the actors could react naturally, further blurring the line between performance and effect. It was an absurdly complex solution, and exactly the kind of madness Videodrome demanded. Fact number 8. Rick Baker thought the script was impossible. Even Rick Baker, the man behind An American Werewolf in London, was shaken when he first read the Videodrome script. Page after page described hallucinations, living flesh, biological technology, and transformations that didn't obey anatomy or physics. Baker later admitted that his initial reaction was panic. He had no idea how many of the effects could actually be achieved. The ideas weren't just difficult, they were abstract, surreal, and intentionally grotesque. There was no clear roadmap for how to build them. But instead of walking away, Baker leaned into the challenge. The uncertainty forced innovation. New techniques were invented, old materials were repurposed, mistakes became breakthroughs. Videodrome pushed Baker further than almost any project before or after, not because it was flashy, but because it demanded the impossible. Fact number 9. Barely legal artists created pure nightmare fuel. Despite the film's disturbing imagery, much of Videodrome's effects work was created by people barely out of their teens. Rick Baker's crew had an average age of just 23 years old, with many members carried over from An American Werewolf in London. These were young artists early in their careers, working long hours to create imagery that would permanently scar audiences. They weren't seasoned veterans. They were learning on the job, experimenting, failing, and adapting in real time. The contrast is striking. Youthful enthusiasm was channeled into some of cinema's most grotesque visuals. The result feels unfiltered, raw, and unrestrained, because it was. There was no corporate polish, no committee oversight, just young artists building nightmares by hand. That energy is still visible on screen. Fact number 10. The scene that proved televisions can float. One of Videodrome's strangest deleted ideas involved a television rising out of a bathtub like a hallucination made real. To test the concept, the crew waterproofed a real television and placed it in a swimming pool. To everyone's surprise, the TV floated. The reason was purely technical. Older cathode ray televisions contained sealed vacuum tubes filled with air, making them buoyant despite their weight. The discovery was so bizarre that it almost felt like a Videodrome moment in real life. Technology behaving in ways people didn't expect or understand. Although the scene was ultimately cut before filming, the test itself became legend among the crew. It was another reminder that Videodrome didn't just depict strange relationships with technology, it uncovered them. Fact number 11, the TV that rose from the bathtub. During development, Cronenberg planned a scene where Max's television would slowly rise out of his bathtub, blurring the line between hallucination and reality. To see if it was even possible, the crew waterproofed a real television and tested it in a swimming pool. What they discovered shocked them. The television floated. Older cathode ray TVS contained sealed vacuum tubes filled with air, making them buoyant despite their weight. The test worked perfectly, but the scene was abandoned before filming. Cronenberg felt it distracted from the film's escalating psychological collapse. Even so, the experiment became legend on set, proof that Videodrome's bizarre ideas sometimes worked a little too well. Fact number 12, Andy Warhol called it the clockwork orange of the 80s. Videodrome confused and repelled mainstream audiences, but it found admirers in unexpected places. One of them was Andy Warhol. Despite the film's commercial failure, Warhol reportedly praised it as the clockwork orange of the 1980s. The comparison was telling. Both films used shocking imagery to explore society's relationship with violence, media, and control, and both polarized audiences on release. Warhol's endorsement didn't save Videodrome at the box office, but it cemented its status as an art house provocation rather than a failed horror movie. Fact number 13, Cronenberg turned down Star Wars for this. After the success of Scanners, David Cronenberg was offered something most directors would never refuse, the chance to direct Return of the Jedi. But he said no. Cronenberg had no interest in directing a film he didn't write, especially one shaped by studio expectations and merchandising. Instead, he chose to make Videodrome, a deeply personal project that explored ideas he couldn't get out of his head. The decision cost him mainstream success, but it gave the world one of the most uncompromising science fiction films ever made. Fact number 14, the professor who became a character. The character of Brian Oblivion wasn't invented out of thin air. He was directly inspired by Marshall McLuhan, the influential media theorist who famously declared that the medium is the message. McLuhan taught at the University of Toronto while Cronenberg was a student, and his ideas permeated the campus. Cronenberg later said McLuhan's influence was impossible to escape. By turning a media philosopher into a man who exists only on television screens, Videodrome transformed theory into horror and made McLuhan's ideas terrifyingly literal. Fact number 15, the unrated scene that pushed too far. The unrated cut of Videodrome includes an extended version of the ear-piercing scene between Max and Nikki. What begins as intimacy escalates into obsession, with Max piercing Nikki's ear multiple times. The scene ends with Max hallucinating that they're having on the Videodrome set itself, a direct fusion of desire, violence, and media. It was moments like this that made distributors nervous. The film didn't just show sex or violence, it merged them into something uncomfortable and unclassifiable. Exactly what Cronenberg intended. Fact number 16. James Woods thought the scene looked ridiculous. One of Videodrome's most infamous moments is the makeout scene between James Woods and the living television. To audiences, it's disturbing, intimate, and strangely erotic. To Woods, it felt embarrassing. After seeing the finished scene, Woods was told by people that it was incredibly sexy. His response was blunt. He said he felt sort of stupid while filming it, pressing his face into a rubber TV screen, reacting to something that wasn't really there, never felt seductive in the moment. That disconnect highlights something important about Videodrome. The power of the scene comes entirely from execution. What felt ridiculous on set became unforgettable on screen. Fact number 17, 3 endings were shot. This one was Wood's idea. Videodrome didn't have a single clear ending at first. 3 different conclusions were planned and partially filmed. One version included an epilogue showing Bianca and Nikki surviving, each with their own chest slits, implying the virus had spread. That sequence was ultimately abandoned due to budget constraints, technical problems, and Debbie Harry falling ill during production. The ending that made it into the film, Max's final act of self-destruction, was James Woods' idea. Cronenberg agreed it was the most honest conclusion. Bleak, unresolved, and unforgettable. Fact number 18. Cronenberg's most expensive film flopped hard. With a budget of nearly $6 million, Videodrome was David Cronenberg's most expensive film at the time. The studio expected a bold science fiction hit. Instead, it was a financial disaster. The film earned just over $2 million at the box office. Audiences were confused, disturbed, and in many cases, repelled. The marketing couldn't explain it. Critics were divided, and the movie vanished quickly from theaters. What failed commercially, however, survived culturally, slowly growing into a cult classic that would eventually define Cronenberg's career. Fact number 19. Cronenberg expected the script to be rejected. Cronenberg never believed Videodrome would be approved. The script was graphic, abstract, and openly hostile to mainstream taste. When financiers actually said yes, Cronenberg was shocked. Producer Claude Héreau reportedly joked that the film would receive a XXX rating before it ever reached theaters. The approval felt unreal, and in a way, it was. Videodrome slipped through the system during a brief window when studios were willing to gamble, even if they didn't fully understand what they were funding. Fact number 20. Roger Ebert said it was barely watchable. Few critics hated Videodrome more than Roger Ebert. While some saw prophecy and intelligence, Ebert saw something else entirely. He called the film one of the least entertaining movies he had ever seen. Not because it was shallow, but because it made him uncomfortable in ways he didn't find rewarding. That reaction perfectly sums up Videodrome's legacy. The film doesn't want universal approval, it wants division. If half the audience recoils while the other half leans in, then it's working exactly as intended. Videodrome didn't predict the future. It warned us about it. A world where media invades the body, desire merges with technology, and reality fractures under constant stimulation. 40 years later, its message feels less like science fiction and more like diagnosis. Long live the new flesh. If you want more deep dives into disturbing cult films and the stories behind them, like, subscribe, and let me know what movie you want covered next.